Chapter 229. Roxanne lowered her gaze, recomposed herself and suppressed her anger from earlier. When she looked up at him again, she gave him an indifferent look. I don't know what I can offer to compensate you. I remember seeing a calf that looks great when I walked around the area this afternoon. Mr. Farwell, what do you say if I buy you a cup of coffee? Okay with that. And he slowly let go of her wrist. When he loosened his grip around her wrist, his fingers mindlessly grazed the soft skin on her wrist. Lucian's eyes darkened a little at the accidental touch, and when he let go of her, he subconsciously clenched his fist. The calf Roxanne mentioned was located in the same building as the hotel, and it was the same calf she saw by chance when they returned to the hotel. After getting lost earlier in the afternoon, she did not invite Lucian to the calf because it was unique from other eateries in the area, but because the calf was the only location she could think of at that moment. They walked into the calf together. Soon, a waitress came up to them. Do you have a reservation? Roxanne shook her head and glanced around. It was dinner time and the peak time for couples to date around in cafes, thus, the place was almost packed when they arrived. Fortunately, the calf occupied a large area but did not set up too many tables inside, giving the customers enough space and privacy from other tables, and not to the extent of feeling uncomfortable. Right then, Roxanne spotted some customers leaving a table near the window, so she walked in that direction. The waitress quickly followed behind. Her eyes lit up as she watched them walk ahead of her. The calf was considered high-end in Belridge, and the customers were mainly the rich and celebrities. The waitress had seen many customers while working in this calf. However, it was her first time seeing a couple like Roxanne and Lucian with striking looks and a unique presence. After following them to the table near the window, the waitress had someone clear the table first before giving them a menu. Then, she recommended enthusiastically, we have the latest couple set menu that is quite the crowd's favorite. Would you like to have that? Hearing that, Roxanne and Lucian were startled. Lucian looked at Roxanne, who was sitting across from him expectantly. He noticed that Roxanne had stopped flipping the menu for a brief moment. She looked at the waitress, smiling faintly. No, thanks. We're not a couple. After saying that, she lowered her head again and browsed the menu. In the end, she only ordered what she wanted and handed the menu to Lucian. Mr. Farwell, order whatever you want. There's no need to be polite with me. I can still afford to buy you a cup of coffee. Lucian was still upset that she denied they were a couple to the waitress, so he did not respond to what she told him. Instead, he said to the waitress, I'll have the same. The waitress nodded in response and walked away with the menu. She stood in the corner while sneaking glances at them sitting by the window. Although she denied being a couple with him, I must say their looks and vibes match each other so well. They're like the perfect match. Later, when she sent drinks to their table, the waitress looked calm on the surface, but she was losing her mind on the inside. They look even better up close. Roxanne's makeup was light enough to enhance her delicate features. She looked so beautiful that the waitress thought she was a celebrity at first. Lucian, on the other hand, had sharp features and a tall build, and he exuded the aura of an authoritative CEO. The waitress could not help but picture them as a perfect match made in heaven. Of course, Roxanne was unaware of what the waitress was thinking about her and Lucian. She felt slightly unwell as the alcohol had finally started kicking in. Her reactions to alcohol always came slower than others. However, since she had asked Lucian out for a cup of coffee, she felt it was inappropriate for her to leave with the excuse of her feeling unwell. That would only give Lucian another reason to mock her. With this in mind, Roxanne suppressed the discomfort inside her and took a sip of her coffee. she felt it was inappropriate for her to leave with the excuse of her feeling unwell that would only give Lucian another reason to mock her. With this in mind, Roxanne suppressed the discomfort inside her and took a sip of her coffee, trying to cancel out the feeling of being drunk. Chapter 230. Lucian took a sip of the coffee as he remained expressionless, masking the displeasure he was feeling. He wanted Roxanne to thank him or compensate him, not to sit in front of him without a word. Although Elle used the business going under as an excuse. Does she really think a cup of coffee is enough to compensate me? Roxanne put down her cup and looked out the window. She had no intention of speaking at all. First, she believed there was nothing else they had to say to each other. Second, she didn't want to get too involved with him. The only reason she had treated him to the coffee was to call it even. She was starting to feel uncomfortable from the alcohol earlier. From time to time, she would lower her head to sip on the coffee while secretly checking how much Lucian had drunk. All she wanted was for him to finish the coffee so she could leave. However, Lucian's coffee stayed almost untouched even after some time. Left with no choice, Roxanne looked at him and asked, "Mr. Farwell, why aren't you drinking?" A dark glint flashed across Lucian's eyes as he pursed his lips enigmatically and said, "I don't like my coffee this way. It tastes bland." Roxanne frowned at his words. "How do you like your coffee then?" she questioned as she rubbed her throbbing temples. After she spoke, her head started spinning again. She closed her eyes and forced them open once again, trying to maintain eye contact with Lucian as though nothing was wrong. Lucian was just about to say something when he saw her expression. "Are you feeling unwell?" Roxanne bit her lip. "I drank a bit too much, but I'm all right. Just tell me how you want me to compensate you, Mr. Farwell. After all, you handle huge transactions, and I'm afraid you won't be satisfied with this compensation." Lucian's face darkened a bit when he took in her pale face and mocking words, but he said nothing in the end. Instead, he asked the waitress for the bill. Roxanne was going to argue that she was supposed to pay, but Lucian had swiped his card. Before she could do so, the waitress was the same person from earlier. From the way she looked at Roxanne, it seemed as though she was questioning why they denied being a couple when they were actually dating. When Roxanne met eyes with the waitress, she felt even more troubled. "Where are you staying? I'll drop you off there." Lucian walked to her side with a grim face, but his actions remained gentle. Without giving Roxanne the chance to reject him, he helped her to her feet. Right after Roxanne stood up, dizziness overcame her, causing her to miss the best opportunity to push him away. When she came back to her senses, Lucian had already brought her to the exit of the cafe. Almost everyone in the cafe was looking at them, and they could clearly see how he had his arms wrapped around her to support her. Roxanne felt extremely weak from her dizzy spell. With so many people watching them, she didn't want to make a scene. Thus, she went along with Lucian and allowed him to bring her into his car. Caden was already waiting in the driver's seat. When they got in, he asked, "Mr. Farwell, where to?" Lucian turned his head and looked at Roxanne, still rubbing her temples. She said in a low voice, "There's no need to trouble yourselves. There are still many seniors waiting for me upstairs. I have to return." With that, she opened the car door to get out. Lucian grabbed her wrist swiftly and held her back. "Either I send you back, or you rest at my hotel. Choose one. My hotel is just nearby." Roxanne knitted her brows and leaned back in the seat. Then she told Caden the name of the hotel she was staying at. Caden nodded and started the engine. "Drive slowly," reminded Lucian. Caden hurriedly nodded in acknowledgement. Throughout the journey, he made sure to drive carefully. Meanwhile, the two people in the back seat stayed silent. Chapter 231. The car slowly came to a stop in front of the hotel in no time. It was then that Roxanne finally spoke. "Thank you. Just drop me off here." She then gave Lucian a nod and got out of the car. The moment her feet touched the ground, she stumbled forward and almost tripped. The alcohol had kicked in since earlier, and it was quite warm in the car. Despite trying her best to stay attentive, she still couldn't help but feel drowsy. Her legs went weak like jelly when she stepped on the ground. Just when she was about to fall forward, she felt a strong arm wrap around her waist and pull her back into the car. Lucian only let go of her once she sat back in the seat and regained her balance. It took Roxanne a few seconds to figure out what had just happened. Their interaction just now was a bit too intimate, and she just couldn't bring herself to thank him. "I'll walk you to your room." Before Roxanne could react, he had already opened the door, gotten out of the car, and moved to her side, waiting for her to get out. After a short moment of hesitation, Roxanne got out. Cautiously, learning from her experience earlier, she took extra care in stepping out of the car and finding her ground. As Lucian watched her walk ahead, he retracted his slightly outstretched arm and strode after her. When they reached her room, Roxanne stopped in her tracks and looked at him. "I can go in by myself. Thank you for your help today, Mr. Farwell. I'll treat you to coffee next time." Without waiting for Lucian's reply, she opened the door and walked inside. Yet before she could close the door, Lucian had forced himself into the room. Roxanne paused and looked at him coldly. "Mr. Farwell, don't you think it's inappropriate for you to follow me into my room? If you don't leave, I'll have to call security." Lucian furrowed his brows. "I'm not planning to do anything. You can rest assured." Seeing how pale she looked, he just couldn't feel at ease. Roxanne could only stand there as he walked into the bedroom and lifted the phone on the nightstand. "Hello? Please bring some hangover medicine," Lucian told the receptionist through the phone. In no time, a knock came from the door. Roxanne and Lucian didn't close the door when they entered earlier, so when Roxanne craned her neck and looked at the door, she saw a hotel staff standing outside with the hangover medicine and a glass of warm water. Lucian walked over and took the medicine and water before thanking the hotel staff. Approaching Roxanne, "Has aid, take the medicine, and I'll leave." Roxanne didn't know what to do with him. She could only comply and accept the hangover medicine. The next moment, he passed the glass of water to her. Anyone who saw the scene would never think that he was the almighty Mr. Farwell of Horrington. Roxanne gulped down the water and looked up at him. "Can you leave now?" Lucian frowned again, but he said nothing further and left the room. After closing the door, he told Caden, "Check me in here. I want the room beside this one." Caden was taken aback, but he soon realized what was going on when he remembered who was staying inside the room. He immediately agreed and hurried down to the reception. Inside the room, Roxanne still felt dizzy after taking the hangover medicine. She washed up quickly and went to bed. Perhaps it was because of the alcohol, but her mind started to wander. After she lay down, she recalled the events from 6 years ago, how she used to do everything she could to make Lucian happy and pay more attention to her, only to see her efforts go in vain. She also thought back to the times he treated her thoughtfully after they met again. Chapter 232. Those memories stirred up mixed emotions within her. Meanwhile, at Ocean Restaurant, Larry continued to drink with the seniors. When he noticed that Roxanne hadn't returned after a long time, he started to worry. Using the excuse of going to the washroom, he went out and gave Roxanne a call. Roxanne was finally about to fall asleep after overthinking for some time, but the sudden noise of her ringtone woke her up. She opened her eyes and took a while to process what was happening. Without even Looking at the caller ID, she answered the call. Hello? Who is this? Larry was bewildered by her question. It's me. Hearing his voice, Roxanne finally came back to reality. She felt that she had forgotten something very important. Where are you? Why aren't you back yet? Larry asked worriedly, unaware of what had happened to her. Only then did Roxanne remember that she was supposed to be at the post-conference dinner. Earlier, she had thought that she would be able to return to the restaurant after buying Lucian coffee, so she had left without telling her seniors. Unexpectedly, she had been brought back to the hotel afterward, and the dinner had totally slipped off her mind. Upon remembering that, Roxanne apologized to Larry. Sorry, Larry, I'm not feeling well, so I left first. I forgot to let you know. Please apologize to them on my behalf. Larry heaved a sigh of relief. Elsie, I thought something bad happened to you. It's good to hear that you're fine. Since you're not feeling well, you should rest up. Le'll tell the seniors. After exchanging a few pleasantries with Roxanne, Larry hung up the phone. When he returned to the private room, everyone turned their attention to him. Where did Dr. Jarvis go? You're already back, yet she's still nowhere to be seen. Larry poured himself some wine and raised the glass. Dr. Jarvis is feeling unwell, so she left first and asked me to apologize to everyone on her behalf. Here, let me give a toast to everyone to thank you for your kind understanding. Bringing the glass to his lips, he downed the drink in one shot. Gerald and the others all reassured Larry that it was fine, although they found it a pity that they weren't able to spend more time with Roxanne. Nevertheless, Roxanne's absence prompted everyone to check the time. It was getting late, and many of them already drunk. Gerald stood up, announcing, I guess it's time to go. Let us gather again soon. Everyone then bade their farewells and left one after another. As the most junior one among them, Larry saw everyone off and was the last one to leave. Exiting the restaurant, he hailed a taxi and headed straight back to the hotel. Although it was already late, he decided to knock on Roxanne's door just in case. I'm the one who brought her here, but I'm not even aware that she's feeling sick. Larry couldn't help but feel uneasy about that. He knocked a few more times, but he got no response at all. From the recollection of Roxanne's drowsy voice on the phone earlier, he figured that she had fallen asleep. Thus, he stopped knocking and returned to his room, which was right beside hers. Since he had drunk a lot that night, he felt lightheaded somehow. When he opened the door to his room, he heard the sound of a door closing and instinctively turned his head. A familiar figure flashed by, and following that, the door on the left of Roxanne's room was closed. However, everything happened too fast, so Larry didn't see it clearly. He quickly tossed the matter out of his mind. Upon returning to his room, he called the reception and asked for some hangover medicine. Then he washed up and got into bed, thinking that he should check on Roxanne after he woke up.